One thing to keep it a buck and just to not sugarcoat it, the lyrics that Durk has out there about slide for Vaughn, got it back in blood, you just don't know that's how it's supposed to be. The podcast comments about I just don't be hearing those comments anymore about sliding for Vaughn. All that stuff is all that stuff is incredibly damaging to Durk. Had those things not been released into the public record, my God, this would be a much easier case to defend.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Y'all know my slogan. I don't know it all, but I know what I've been through. Now, before we get into this video, make sure you check us out on Patreon at www.patreon.com/Hookah Anonymous _. You guys been telling us to create one for the longest, so we recently created a community where we will upload videos that we can't share on YouTube due to their guidelines. We'll also be dropping the latest to there first, behind the scenes information that you wouldn't find anywhere else on our socials. So make sure you become a member, and after you do that, head over to our official Instagram page at Hookah Anonymous _ and follow us there. Now without further ado, let's get into what you guys came here to see. Now, here we go with the annual Lil Durk updates, as this time we have the infamous lawyer for workers, aka Mo Gangat, who is a New York lawyer who usually gives his expertise on high-profile cases. Now, he has came out recently and have gave us an update on Lil Durk's situation, giving his perspective on the outcome of the case in regards to what he knows the law to be, being that he is an attorney after all, right? Now, before we get into the video, real brief breakdown. I've seen a few clips of this via Instagram, and basically he's given a few reasons on why it's actually looking good for Lil Durk within his RICO case, despite everyone saying that Durk is cooked. He broke down a bunch of evidence that has been withdrawn from the case, as well as lyrics that's been used that according to him will be null and void. Now, let me be honest with y'all right now. Y'all been paying attention to the videos we've been doing covering this Lil Durk case. I have not yet one time said that it was over for Lil Durk completely, and here's why. Do I think it's a high chance that it's over? Yeah. And it's based on more than just song lyrics. However, I also know a few things about the law. For one, it's not what you know, it's what you could prove. I can almost guarantee Durk is guilty, and that's just solely off the information he himself have told the public throughout his music, his affiliates' music, and other incriminating BS that these guys chose to put on social media. But in the court of law, knowing isn't enough. It's what you could prove. And I can't stress this enough. Many people, when they keep referring to this RICO case, they keep mentioning song lyrics. Like, are y'all forgetting that the feds claim to have several witnesses and informants? Not only that, but if you think the feds are going to spend their time and money to investigate and go all the way to trial and base their whole prosecution on song lyrics and music videos, you're crazy. I told y'all before, that's just the bait put out there for now. And when trial finally gets here, watch the rabbit they pull out the hat like they're known to do. Now, one of the main reasons why I wouldn't say that Durk is cooked is simply because, as I said it before, that industry is weird. We've seen plenty of people get off some weird stuff, whereas if it was me and you, we would have been cooked. There's no 2, 3, 4 trial dates getting pushed back. We just would have been done, bucko. So basically, I feel it can go either way. My opinion is whether they get Durk or not, somebody is going to have to take this rap. The city of Los Angeles is not about to let a high-profile case like this, where they're spending a whole bunch of money to go to trial and somebody lost their life, just slip from under their hands like this. Especially when they got guys on camera and a bunch of evidence along with people willing to testify. So whether it's Durk or not, somebody is most definitely going to get cooked for it. Now, as far as everything else, we can all agree that it's not looking good for Durk. I'm itching to see how his attorneys are going to wiggle out of this one, because the feds claim to have informants willing to testify. Not one, but several. In real life, if you have someone that was a part of your case testifying against you, you can almost guarantee that you're done, because they're the ones that's there. They're the ones that the grand jury would assume knows everything because they're part of your case. How do you think Sammy the Bull was able to take down a whole mafia and crime organization against John Gotti and others all by himself? So I'm not saying that it can't go either way, but what I am saying is that his lawyers definitely have their work cut out for him, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. However, let's get into what Mo had to say in regards to his Durk update. But before we do, make sure you hit that thumbs up button so we can get this video into the algorithm. And if you not subscribed to the platform already, make sure you do so now. Let's get into it.
Trial has been pushed to August 2026. If you listen to the noise, all you're going to hear is Durk is cooked. Nobody's there for Durk. Motion denied. But that's just the noise. The fact of the matter is his trial team has won a number of points in this case. The indictments, there's been 3 indictments, and each time the allegations against Durk have thinned out. Some of the evidence that they wanted to use has actually been withdrawn so that the judge didn't have to exclude it. I'm going to take you through it piece by piece. I'll leave the best parts for the end. First, when they charged Durk, the main allegation about him rapping in his lyrics was this lyric about him going, told me they got an addy, got location, green light, seen your son on the news screaming, no, no. Okay, that lyric. If you play that lyric, then you play the video of Quando next to the murdered victim, no, no, you would have won major points with a jury. That lyric's not in the indictment anymore because Finling showed that those lyrics were written well before the murder. Couple more.
See, we already knew that, right? This got nothing to do with the trial date being pushed back. We want to know more current news. We already knew that the lyric of Quando Rondo saying no, no, wasn't going to be used. That's cool. But what's happening now? Why did they push it back? And what new information is being put out there concerning this case?
Or points. When they bought this case, they said the conspiracy started in August 2022. That's when Durk arranged to get these rentals, these flights. That's when he made arrangements for the bounty. Then they switched that and they said, actually, the conspiracy started back when Von died in November 2020. And they had to do that because they needed to bring in more lyrics. They needed to bring in Instagram comments and the podcast comments to build that whole story, because it wasn't enough to just show him paying shooters and show him renting cars. Maybe they're not going to be able to show all that. Let's extend it back. Let's give the jury a bigger story. They withdrew evidence of a 2022 incident in Chicago, which appears to have been them wanting to show that, hey, look, another time in Chicago back in 2022, he paid for people to go do violence. Well, they took that off the table and they said, hey, we're not going to talk about any of that. And here's the big one. When they charged Durk, they said in the indictment about the bounty that at the direction of defendant Durk Banks, defendant Wilson, that's OTF Didi, would pay the bounty or monetary reward to the shooters. That's gone. We know OTF Didi Wilson is going to trial. So their main allegation on the bounty that Durk told Didi to pay the shooters is gone, and they're pivoting to another way to prove the bounty. What did they pivot to? They say the consideration, the thing Durk promised for the murder, was lucrative music opportunities with OTF, putting people in videos. That's their theory of the bounty payment. That is where you make your defense. The murder for hire statute requires quid pro quo. The murder has to be committed in exchange for something of economic value, not an after-the-fact gift, not something that you would have just happened anyway, not something you do normally as part of your business, an actual contract. Okay, and if all the government can do is point out that the shooters were in the music videos after the fact, a jury has a real question to answer about that was a murder contract or just some other part of a relationship between a lot of people who were connected in a lot of ways. Lil Durk update.
All right, he does have a point when it comes to that. However, what I'm going to say is this. They're not just going to withdraw evidence like that and not have a backup, right? They're not just going to put all this information out there due to the investigation and then take it back and say, you know what, don't worry about it. I'm pretty sure they have a reason for withdrawing it. Whatever that reason is, who knows? But at the end of the day, they're not going to build this case up like this and just take away all their main evidence without having something to back them up. Simple as that. Now let's go on to part 2.
Interestingly, at the same time that the government pivoted from saying Didi paid the shooters to saying, hey, it was putting people in music videos, they also added a fallback charge. So when they bought the case, the original indictment, there was no stalking charge. In the second superseding indictment against Durk, they added a stalking charge. And the stalking charge is important because it doesn't require any contract. No quid pro quo, no bounty, no payment theory. You can add that charge and simply prove that, hey, he was telling people to go do this. He didn't necessarily pay them to go do a murder, but he was telling them to go follow that guy. He was telling them to go stalk that guy. And a jury can look at it and say, a lot like in the Diddy case, that, hey, not exactly sure here. Very, 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 very suspicious individual over here. I'm going to go ahead and hit him with the lesser charge. And so, when the government puts in that fallback charge later in the case, that tells you that they're not 100% sure on their theory, that they acknowledge that, hey, we need to have a fallback here. Keep an eye out.
Well, not necessarily, right? Maybe the reason when the indictment initially came about, the investigation wasn't as deep as it was. Because remember, when they first brought the indictment, they just had surface level things. Now, as they progressed, remember, we started seeing photos of them following Quando Rondo. We started seeing photos of the shooters. And this just goes to show, like, yeah, it might be a fallback charge, but it's also because we did our due diligence in our investigation a little more, and we found out more. Simple as that. We only added it because we found out more. And everybody thought all we had was music lyrics, but no. Come to find out, they have license plate readers, they have pictures of the shooters. Who else knows how much they got? But they can't reveal all they have now because they don't want to show their hand. This is why at first Durk and them wanted a speedy trial, right? To try to hurry up and catch them off guard. They said no, it was shot down. And usually when people go for a speedy trial, it's because they know they have some guilt and they're trying to hurry up and catch them on a technicality or something like that.
For a couple things. One, the motion for an anonymous jury is still hanging out there. That means that the jurors go in there and their identities and names and addresses are not revealed. If that motion gets granted, it's going to change the complexion of this case significantly, because if you're a juror and you go in there and the judge tells you, hey, we're going to keep everything confidential and your identity secret because this is a dangerous case, well, you might rule a certain way based on hearing that information. The other thing to keep an eye out for, not all of the lyrics have been ruled on.
But not only that, right? It can be that, but it also could be the fact that Durk is a high public figure. Also, he has a lot of money. So if they know of, all they need is one juror to say, no, he's not guilty. All they need is one. So the reason why they do these anonymous jurors, just in case anybody trying to sway them, whether it's with money, luxury things, or trying to bribe them to put in a not guilty plea. So it could be what he's saying, but it also could be to protect the fact that they can use some type of money or something of monetary value to try to sway a juror to say that he's not guilty.
On a lot of the lyrics, especially those lyrics that have to do with bounties, the judge said, hey, when we get to closer to trial and I see how the government is going to try to prove a bounty, that's when I'll decide whether these lyrics about bounties are relevant. One thing, to keep it a buck, and just to not sugarcoat it, the lyrics that Durk has out there about slide for Vaughn, got it back in blood, you just don't know, that's how it's supposed to be. The podcast comments about, I just don't be hearing those comments anymore about sliding for Vaughn. All that stuff is all that stuff is incredibly damaging to Durk. Had those things not been released into the public record, my God, this would be a much easier case to defend. All that being said, Durk trial, August 2026, this will...
And he's right? He said all that to make it seem like everything was okay and then saved the most damaging things for last, right? Because we do know, forget just the lyrics about sliding for Vaughn. These guys' job is to prove that this man put bounties on people's heads. And just off my head alone, I could probably tell you 5 to 10 Durk songs where he's talking about putting money on people's heads. Getting this guy going, getting you out of here. I could have had you unalive. I put money on his. I take my, like, come on. So the whole point is they gotta prove that this man is a man that put bounty on people's heads and he's guilty of the charge that he's being charged with. Now, let me go a little further, right? Let me say this. Remember the robbery that happened at his gated community where he said India was shooting, or whatever the case may be? Remember DJ Academics revealed that the feds showed up? And I told y'all before, when the feds came, he was definitely being watched by the feds since then, right? So it's no telling what they have. because it's either one or two things that happen when the feds come to a regular shooting that happening in a city. You just don't see the feds popping up when a crime happens in a state. You're going to see local law enforcement, state police, whatever the case may be. The only time you're going to see the feds on the scene of a crime is if there's a federal witness involved or somebody that's their target involved. Simple. Because they want to know what happened. And I know everyone's going to be in the comments and say things like, well, he's a lawyer, I'm sure he knows. How you think you're more credible than a lawyer? I'm not taking nothing from him, because he is in fact an attorney. But that don't mean he knows the outcome of this case. And to be honest, nobody does. At this point, we're all just giving our opinions on the information that we're receiving. That's just it, opinions. Keep in mind, yes, he's a lawyer, but he's also the same one that was telling us that Tory may be getting off during his trial with Meg, and we seen how that played out, right? Free Tory, by the way. But the point of the matter is, none of us 100% knows what the verdict is going to be until trial comes out. Now let's get into what we know about the trial being pushed back, which I think this is like the third or fourth time. This time it was due to a motion that was filed where they were trying to have Lil Durk excluded from the rest of the defendants. Actually, I think they were all trying to sever themselves from Lil Durk, whatever the case may be. Now this could have been a play by Diddy and them and their attorneys in hopes of trying to save Durk solely because they know that they are cooked already. Or it could have been a move by Durk's attorneys to have him severed so their guilt don't look bad on Lil Durk, right? And spill over to him. But like I said in the previous video, them severing ties from Durk and them just wouldn't make sense. I've seen them break co-defendants up before. Hell, I had co-defendants where we were able to get broken up and have our own days in court. But our case was a different case. This case right here is a case where if they severed Durk from them, it wouldn't make sense because the whole point of his charge is that allegedly he instructed them to carry out a shooting that took the life of another man. So how are you going to sever him from them when their charges all correlate with each other, right? But anyway, let's see what an article from Yahoo had to say in regards to the trial date getting pushed back once again, as it states, quote, Lil Durk will have to wait until August for his federal murder for hire trial after a judge denied a request by his 3 co-defendants to have their cases heard separately. The decision means the Grammy-winning rapper, whose legal name is Durk Banks, will remain in custody without bail for an additional 4 months before reaching a jury. His trial, previously scheduled for April, is now set for August 20th. On behalf of Banks, we are fully prepared to proceed to trial. The matter was continued by the court over our objection. His lawyers, Drew Finland and Christy O'Connor, said in a statement to Rolling Stone. The judge previously cited a scheduling conflict involving counsel for one of the co-defendants in settling a later trial date. In his ruling issued Friday, U.S. District Court Judge Michael Fitzgerald wrote that Banks was indicted alongside the 3 men, DeAndre Dontrell Wilson, Asa Houston, and David Brian Lindsay, for alleged participation in the same conspiracy. Trying the 4 men together, the judge said, served judicial efficiency given that the vast majority of evidence would be admissible against each defendant. The judge said any risk of spillover prejudice from evidence introduced against Banks but not applicable to the other defendants could be addressed through instructions to jurors. While some of the evidence focuses solely on defendant Banks and may require limiting instructions, none of that evidence is so egregious or voluminous that it would prevent the jury from making a reliable judgment about guilt or innocence, the judge wrote. He added that the motion to sever had been considerably stronger before prosecutors said they would abandon their claim that a 2022 unaliving in Chicago was a separate M for hire scheme allegedly tied to Banks. Banks had denied the government's allegations and challenged the inclusion of that evidence. Lawyers for the 3 co-defendants did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Banks 33 has pleaded not guilty to charges that he used coded language to hire a group of alleged hitmen to travel to Los Angeles and carry out an execution-style unaliving in broad daylight on August 19, 2022. Federal prosecutors say the intended target was Tyquan Terrell Bowman, known as Quando Rondo, whom Banks allegedly blamed for the 2020 shooting death of his friend and protege, Davon King Von Bennett. Now here's the thing, right? I don't know why people swear that law enforcement is stupid, but somehow they always end up proving people wrong. And the prosecutors are alleging that the unaliving of Quando's cousin was due to retaliation for King Von. Now, it's easy to say that they don't have enough information to prove that, but they can already clearly prove that it was tension between Quando Rondo, Lil Tim, and the rest of them, all due to just the songs from not just Lil Durk, but Lil Tim himself, NBA Youngboy, as well as social media back and forth that these guys were doing. Remember that pic of NBA Youngboy where he spelled out in the money saying, "You ninjas gonna DIE," and Durk responded as well? Y'all don't think that all that could be used as a motive? Y'all don't think when Brick Baby sat up there and basically hinted that the reason they can't say Slide for Vaughn no more is because of what happened to Lil Pab?
Oh yeah,
Slide for Vaughn,
ain't
right?
nobody.
Yeah.
They say you can't say that no more.
Why? Oh yeah, because of no. Like
They
who died?
say you can't say that no more.
Oh, because of FBG Cash? Or who?
Nah, cause Lil Pab.
Oh, what's that?
But I'm just saying, they just say you can't say that no more. That's the new term on like no more Slide for Vaughn.
Because of Lil Pop. Now, after that incident, though,
Or even when Durk himself went on academics and did pretty much the same thing.
Triggered by the Slide for Vaughn comments. I don't know if people still say it. They used to say it, but you also mentioned a song. They'd be like, they be singing Slide for Vaughn. I think they trolling me. Yo, that song is fire, I ain't gonna lie.
For some reason, I just don't see the comments no more. For some odd reason. I don't know. Might be the water. You be seeing the comments a lot?
They kind of chilled out a little bit.
I wonder why. We here though. We different in the rap.
Now, once again, people assume law enforcement are just stupid and don't know what's going on because they use coded language. But it don't matter. They understand, and I'm sure they'll be able to convey it to the grand jury the same exact way. Now, when it comes back to the motion of severance between Durk and the rest of the co-defendants, it's no surprise that the motion wasn't granted in this situation because, once again, the whole point of the M for hire is that the prosecutor's saying that he hired them to pull this off. So if you can't affiliate him with them, then the M for hire charge will have to disappear because who did he hire? And how did he hire them if they're not affiliated? Remember this, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove in court. And to be honest with you, it's not a good look if you around all them guilty people where there's no denying guys such as OTF, Didi, and the other ones are guilty because they were placed on the scene of the crime, then what do you think is gonna look like for Lil Durk? As the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. So you think they're gonna say that all of these guys are guilty, and even though they're all affiliated with Durk, Durk is innocent. We don't believe he had anything to do with what was going on, right? Come on, man. Anyway, let us know what y'all think about the updates from Mo concerning this RICO trial, and also how do you feel about the trial date getting pushed back for like the third or fourth time? Y'all let us know what y'all think about all this, man. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell so you're notified every time we drop new content. And remember, as long as you keep on watching, I'm gonna keep on dropping. I'm out.